Hello and welcome to Air Cargo Europe's Air Cargo of Tomorrow session in partnership with Air Cargo News. My name is Damien Brett and I am the editor of the aforementioned Air Cargo News, and I'm going to be moderating today's session. We've got a stellar lineup for you over the coming 60 minutes as we delve into the future of the air cargo industry. But just before we get things underway and I introduce our panel, a quick overview of what we're going to be discussing for the next hour or so. For those of you listening earlier today, you'll have heard about the pandemic and how it has hit the current air cargo market and also the outlook for the current air cargo market. But to round off the day, we want to look over the horizon. Now, that doesn't mean we won't be discussing the pandemic. It's a hard subject to avoid, but we'll probably be more looking at its lasting effect on the market. There's obviously been a switch from belly hold operations to freighter operations or passenger cargo operations even, utilising fewer hubs. But is that development here to stay, or will the industry in 2029 or even 2025 look the same way it did in 2019 before the pandemic? Another hot topic is the adoption of technology. It appears to be accelerating over recent months with the use of digital platforms, robotics, drones, air cargo communities establishing centralized platforms, and there's a whole host of other technologies. But which ones are going to impact the air cargo market, and how can the industry utilize them to improve efficiency and customer service levels? Supply chains are also changing. I feel like I've been writing about the near sourcing, reshoring trend for about the last 10 years. Firstly, as production costs in China started to rise, but more recently, trade disputes, the pandemic, and other one-off events, extraordinary events, have pushed companies to look at sourcing from multiple locations to avoid the impact of unexpected events on slowing up their supply chains. Sustainability, in terms of people, profit, and planet is also back on the agenda in a big way. At Air Cargo News, we've been writing a lot, probably since about December last year, a lot about airlines' SAF, sustainable fuel programs, as companies, and that includes forwarders, shippers, airlines, ground handlers, are becoming increasingly conscious of the impact they have on the environment. Well, I could talk all day about this, but it's probably enough from me. So let me get things underway by introducing our panel. Joining me today, we have Céline Orcard, who is the Managing Director of consultancy Change Horizon. From the world's largest, thank you, Céline, from the world's largest air freight forwarder, DHL Global Forwarding, we have Thomas Mack, who is the head of global air freight. From the world's largest cargo airline, Qatar Airways, we have Chief Officer Cargo, Guillaume Alou. And last but by no means least, we have Wilson Kwong from Hactl, which is the largest cargo handler at the world's largest international cargo airport. Okay, hello everyone. Thanks for joining us today. It's nice to see you all. I guess we should probably kick the session off by tackling the COVID crisis and what you all think the long-term impact of that will be on the market. Obviously, currently there's less belly hold operations, more freighter operations, and also passenger cargo operations. There's probably, or at times, there's been greater congestion at some of the main hubs, changes in the types of cargo. But what do you think will be the kind of long-term impact of the COVID crisis on the air cargo market, if any? You might feel like things will just go back to normal in the coming years. Guillaume, from Qatar, perhaps we could get an airline to kick this one off.
Thank you, Damien. Pleasure to be here today. Thank you very much, and hello to all the viewers and my friends panelists here. Frankly, I do believe that there will be a post-COVID that will look very much like the pre-COVID. At the end of the day, the belly capacity hopefully will return. There are a number of talks about technology allowing companies to do less business trips and therefore having an impact on the passenger airline business model. But after all, there will always be a need for people to travel, right? So those bellies will come back. When? We don't know. Definitely not in the short term in a significant manner. And then we will end up fighting again because there will be on some lanes overcapacity, on other lanes capacity crunch. I think in that respect, it's only a moment in time, and then things will come back to normal. However, the COVID crisis will leave some elements to our industry, but I think we'll talk about it later on technology, for example, or maybe sustainability.
Okay. Celine, perhaps you could give us your thoughts on the long-term impact of COVID on the air cargo industry.
Yeah, I agree with Guillaume. Actually, probably it's a moment in time, but it's also a critical moment where we will see companies like not surviving the crisis. Merger and acquisitions. We just heard about the big one yesterday. So there will be a different landscape in terms of players in the industry after that. There will be aircraft flying, capacity there, but who is going to operate that capacity? We don't know. In what terms? We don't know. So that's for me the big change. In terms of really pure business, then, I guess, and I really feel that, yes, we will continue having goods moving from one place to another by air and by other modes of transport. We will still having people flying, hopefully. So the overall industry will be there, but different players, probably different rules. And I would say the critical actions we have to undertake today is to redefine, what we want to be tomorrow, and to be prepared to be part of the game tomorrow. So that's the thing. And then, I'm sure we will discuss about sustainability, digital transformation, putting the customer first. That's going to be key drivers for tomorrow's air cargo.
Thomas, I guess the kind of same question to you. I guess I'm kind of maybe a bit surprised that, well, not surprised, but the thought of the industry going back the same way, that seems to be kind of a bit disputed. So I don't know, from a forwarder's perspective, are you kind of bracing for having to keep your charter networks up and capacity being hard to come across in the long term, or do you kind of agree that passengers will be and will get back on planes and that things will go back to normal, although given we don't really know how long that will take?
We already see that, for example, on the U.S. domestic, that the passengers are coming back. The flights within the U.S. They're pretty full. I do believe that once the vaccines are distributed and once the quarantine restrictions are lifted, that the passengers will come back, and then consequently the long haul flights will come back. What I do believe what's going to happen is on the forwarding side, we will, after COVID, get more into dedicated flight operations. We will take on more own flights in order to assure that we have access to capacity. That is definitely something that that COVID is driving for the forwarding industry. In regards to when the flights are coming back, that depends on as soon as the travel restrictions are lifted and as soon as the vaccinations have been distributed. I believe that what we see is probably in the fourth quarter 2021 we will see a first impact. But then again, aside from the other topics that we're going to discuss, we will continue to operate our own airplanes, and own airplanes we mean on the forwarding side, that we will partner up with with various airlines, where we buy firm fixed capacity in the long term.
And that's kind of a part of risk mitigation, that you kind of feel that shippers won't be or will be more risk averse in the future, and you're kind of meeting that need.
What we saw is the asset that we had during COVID is definitely the availability of capacity. Mm-hmm. What our customers expect from us is access to capacity in order to maintain their supply chains. That was the asset that we had, and we need to assure to our customers that we do have access to capacity. And I believe that it is time that we go into a bigger risk sharing together with our airlines, and not just leave that up to the asset provider, to the airline.
Yeah. Wilson, I guess for you, it's kind of a bit of a different perspective there. I guess the handling industry has been affected in a bit of a different way in terms of COVID, in terms of keeping workers, making sure all your workers are able to work, and dealing with having workers quarantined, and also these demand surges we've seen. What do you think will happen for handlers in the long term? Do you think you're going to be impacted?
Well, thank you, Damien, for inviting me, and it's a wonderful occasion. I mean, for me to share thoughts and to learn from the group of esteemed speakers here. I think you talk about the COVID crisis. I think, well, for certain, I think my thought is that cargo has definitely acquired a new importance. I think in the airline boardrooms, that has definitely changed and become very significant, and that won't change. I think even after COVID. I tend to agree with earlier comments, especially from Yip, that, well, I myself am looking forward to traveling again and traveling soon. So some kind of travel will come back. The extent and the mix of traveling and then how they will come back may differ and may vary from country to country or from continent to continent, but it will come back. It's just a matter of time. But I think in terms of, well, let me talk about from the capacity perspective first. I think the rate of resumption of passenger services would definitely affect the capacity. And for those passenger aircraft that has higher cargo capacity will probably come back soon, as it also give flexibility when it comes to the cargo. On the demand side, I'm sure Thomas have seen it. The e-commerce definitely have driven a lot of demand, I think, over the past 12 and 18 months. What will really happen, I think, from a handler's perspective, is that we will be expected to handle, be able to handle the cargo and the flights, no matter the conditions. Obviously, it places huge pressure, I think, on handlers like Hector. But for us, one very important mission remains the same. Our mission throughout the pandemic was to ensure our continuous operations so that we keep the global air cargo supply chain going. And that has always been our mission. So whether it was for staff quarantine, whether it was for how we roster them, how we handle the much changed flight patterns and demands, we were there and we were successful. Thanks a lot, to all our 2,400 colleagues, but more importantly, our partners who have placed a huge trust in us. All in all, I think for the handling industry, we just need to be more agile, and we need to go with the flow and understand how the trade mix is going to change, and be prepared to to adopt to the new normal, so to speak.
Yeah. So flexibility is in growing importance. I'm sure that's true throughout the industry. Wilson, while we're talking to you, my next question is kind of a bit of a generic and overview of your thoughts on the future, but just to set the scene for the remainder of the discussion, what do you think will be the biggest change for air cargo over the coming years?
There will be some. I think. Well, I'll say perhaps two things, and since I know that we'll be discussing the other topics later as well, the biggest change I'll say would be automation, definitely for handlers. And we must begin, automation must begin to feature more heavily. Why? Because and certainly, not just in Hong Kong, but in many places in the world as well, it is becoming more challenging and costly to recruit and retain staff. Some of the processes like storing and retrieval of ULDs or towing of container trains on the ramp, I think are suitable processes to be automated. But then again, the whole industry has been talking about it, and there will always be limitations such as the buildup of pallets and then how we stuff containers, where complexities of the pallet profiling and the placement of the denser cargo to protect the fragile commodities will continue to demand human intervention. I mean, we see that. Associated with that, digitalization, and again, this is a term which everyone talks about, but to a different extent, I think to different people. But digitalization would definitely increase because we need seamless and unimpeded information flows and visibility. Now, all that demands a lot of investments. And that brings me back to the point which I would add to my previous answers on how the post-COVID world should change. And that is, I hope rates will remain at a more sustainable level so that the industry can get sensible returns so that they can pump into the investment much needed for the industry.
Yeah, it's a good point. And Wilson, do you feel like that there's been a kind of acceleration in the drive towards adopting digital and new technologies over the recent couple of years? Air Cargo's kind of had a bit of a reputation for being a bit of a slow adopter of new technologies. Do you think that's changing at all?
Well, definitely more people are talking about it, but certainly among the speakers here, I mean, all of us have been looking at automation and digitalization. So there are some players which are faster than others, so to speak. But I think in terms of particular areas which people are talking about it now, definitely robotics is something which people have been talking, and this is something which we have been looking and at a accelerating speed over the past few months. I say accelerating speed because one, the technology is becoming more mature. Secondly, more people are jumping into the industry to look at it. So we're now trialing a new automated parts stores to support the engineering team that maintains our giant systems in our terminal. And this facility features robotic order picking. Now, we are doing that as a trial because we want to see whether it's scalable and can be installed elsewhere in the terminal. We are also creating automated loose cargo storage and retrieval systems that ultimately could drive automated forklifts. Now, we have been looking at that for some time, but the technology and the precision requires improvements, and they're slowly getting there. Third thing we're looking at, ramp container, train towing. We're obviously interested in that, but again, because you're talking about longer distances and more stakeholders there, it will require collaboration with Airport Authority as well as the other players. So some thoughts.
Yeah. From an airline's perspective, what do you think will be the biggest change in air cargo in the future?
In line with what Wilson said, Damien, clearly, COVID has accelerated two things. The awareness of the need for sustainability, which was, let's be honest, not very much engaged by our industry overall, and the need for digitalization. So on digitalization, what we see is very rapid acceleration, not only from us but from our customers. And we signed up with WebCargo by Freightos as a third-party platform to take bookings. We've rolled out only 7 countries out of the whole network of Qatar Airways. That's really a pilot. It's a small pilot, and it's been less than 3 months, and we have recorded several thousands of bookings already. and we only offer general cargo for the moment. So the level of adoption was beyond our own belief, to be honest. We felt that there was a need from our forwarder customers, and now we know there is a strong appetite, and then that appetite, this is really what is very interesting, is that appetite is all across the board, right? In those 7 countries, we're getting electronic bookings via Freightos from local heroes, local players, small forwarders, large players, from companies as big as Tom's company, the DHL Global Forwarding. So we see it all across the board, and we are now going to speed up our rollout of the rest of the world because we see that it's definitely there, and it comes with a number of benefits. Obviously, being able to accept and confirm a booking without human intervention brings huge benefits for our customers and for us. We are now open 24/7, as simple as that, right? There is no weekend anymore. We are able to confirm capacity immediately, and the whole pricing and capacity management is controlled from our revenue management system, without the risk of human errors, human intervention. In some countries, you have a compliance risk as well that technology will help avoid or mitigate. So that's one example on the commercial front. On the operational side, we have invested in automatic dimension scanners. So cargo transiting through the hub is scanned automatically, not all of it, but we're ramping that up. And obviously, knowing the exact dimension of each piece of cargo is critical to us, because that allows us to optimize our pallet, our build-up, and our capacity. So while we do that, we save on productivity and we gain in efficiency. So these are technologies that are available today. Yes, it is an investment, and in the year of COVID, investing has proven to be a challenge for everybody. For many airlines, there is a very important cash flow situation and concern. But we are rolling that out because definitely the speed of deployment of technology is there. If you look at, I'm going back to marketplaces, if you look at marketplaces 3 to 5 years ago, there was no names, right? And now if you go on social media, you keep seeing those posts from those marketplaces. I don't want to name all the companies here, but something is definitely happening for the first time. We've been talking about it for more than 10, 20 years maybe, and now it's really happening.
Yeah, it seems there's a real drive from the customers, and that's what the industry's been waiting for, to kind of push those changes. And do you think you mentioned there that COVID's helped accelerate it? Do you think there's more to it than that it's suddenly in the last couple of years really picked up? Is it, or is it?
It's a very good question, because I keep asking myself that question precisely. Why now? I fail to totally understand. I can only observe that it has accelerated, that I see the number of interactions that we have, the number of customers asking us, what can you do? Guide me through your own website. How can I book directly on you? All those sort of things. Those are questions that have multiplied, during the time of COVID. So maybe because in a number of countries, our customer freight forwarders were working from home also, and their own technology maybe was not there, or I don't know. I think the work from home and the lockdown situation in many countries probably has contributed. And now, what it is with technology, once you get to taste it, and once you get to try it, then you get hooked. We've received our first booking via mobile phone a couple of weeks ago, and since then, it's timetains every week. So it's picking up very, very fast. Let's be honest, it's still marginal in the big scheme of things in how we do business. It is still marginal, right? We are by far not at all a digitalized airline at the moment. But when I see how quick it goes, then the plan that we had, which was a 5-year plan, has now become a 2 to 3 year plan.
Yeah. And Thomas, from your perspective, from a forwarder's perspective, it sounds like technology, automation are the kind of big changes coming for air cargo over the next 10 years. Is that what you see as well?
Yes, and COVID for sure was driving that, and Guillaume is right. The fact that we have some of our workforce working from home, that definitely gave a push to the digitalization. Be that the online booking, be that the automated event controlling, and so on. And particularly what I like to hear is about the ground handling. I think we, on the forwarding side, we neglected for the longest time the ground handler, and they play an essential role. And we found that out now during the crisis we had, and the boom on the cargo side, also related to a massive shift from ocean freight to air freight. We realized that we neglected the ground handlers for the longest time. We did not include the ground handlers in the digitalization, for example, and that is something that we learned, and that we will now push, where we will actively approach the ground handlers and see if we can find solutions in regards to automation. Let's say an RFI label, for example, where we can keep automated tracing and tracking of where the cargo is. The retrieval of the cargo, as mentioned before, is one of the top, one of the pressing issues. It cannot be that we fly 10 hours, and then it takes us 2 days to retrieve the cargo, be that loose or be that as a ULD. We need to take a look at if we can relieve the airports, if we can do a direct pickup, tarmac pickup, if we have ULDs. And I believe COVID was definitely driving that whole discussion, and that also because you see the boom on the e-commerce side, and the customer that is using e-commerce has a different expectation in regards to tracing and tracking. They want to know exactly at what time, what day, what time the cargo is going to arrive, or the parcel that is going to arrive with what they ordered. And I think that is something what we also learned from our colleagues from DHL Express, is we need to be significantly better in improving the lead time, in being accurate with our lead time. And the only way to do that is definitely if we include ground handlers, if we include the airlines, and if we digitalize every work step that is possible. And I think COVID is definitely helping and driving that. Also the acceptance from the people, because some of them work from home. And if you would have asked me a year and a half ago, can operators work from home? I would say, no, that is impossible. They need to be at the airport. There's no other way. And now we found out that we can do that. And I think it takes always an event. It takes something to open your mind and see that you can do things better and different.
Yeah, so it sounds like collaboration for you is kind of one of the big changes, or more collaboration is going to be one of the big changes in air cargo, partly fueled by COVID and the impact that's had. And in terms of digitalization, are your customers, are they also wanting more digital interactions with forwarders when it comes to, I guess, booking and also by the sounds of it, visibility, but in terms of booking, or how's that changed?
But we introduced our DHLi. That is basically the platform for our customers, where they can book shipments, they can look for rates, and they can do the tracing and tracking. And we are linking the DHLi to our main carriers, to our preferred carriers, where we get the automated events. That is something where we see a tremendous push. Also, because some of the customers are working from home, they're not in their office, so they need an access to the information. And what we introduced with DHLi, that is definitely going to be the future. The visibility of where the cargo is very important. And prior to that, the booking process and also the costing, the air freight rates, the customers today want that automated. And another thing is we will eventually link that to the CO2 consumption. So as a customer, you have options in the future to do a booking, and then also decide if you want to have that with sustainable aviation fuel or the regular way. And I think that is definitely something where we saw a strong push now during COVID.
Yeah. Celine, same kind of question to you. What do you envisage being the the biggest change for air cargo in the long-term future?
Well, first, I'd like to say I'm really, really delighted to hear what I heard from Wilson, Guillaume, and Tom. That's very exciting to see the pace, the acceleration of transformation of our industry. And for me, it's digital and sustainable transformation. And I would not say that this is due to COVID, because it was pre-COVID. I mean, all the investments in digital, in platforms, in automation, etc. It started way before. But what you ask the question on why is that? Why do we see acceleration? I really believe that we are at that moment where we have this combination of factors with a new generation of leaders that is there and driving also transformation. They have, I mean, Guillaume has still 20 years in front of him to do something. It's not close. He's not close to retirement, so he's obviously like really incentivized to drive transformation in his industry, and all those like new startups that are popping up on every topics. So we talked about community platforms, we talked about track and trace, automation. I mean, I can see so many fantastic ideas popping up on the market and really being heard and being more and more visible, adopted, tried. So I think we are in that like fantastic moment that finally this is happening. And this is happening because we have people that are passionate about this industry, that really want to make it better, to make it more sustainable. I'm a strong advocate for transformation. It's what I have done the past, I don't know how many years. But I used to be the head of cargo transformation at IATA, and I worked on FACE for the Future Air Cargo Executive program to attract young talents and to bring them to the industry, the cargo facility of the future, the vision for that, and what are the mega trends that will really drive the transformation in the warehouse. The digitalization of booking and track and trace, making cargo talk, making cargo interactive. So this is all coming here in the puzzle. So on my side, to answer the question about what's next, what are the biggest things that are going to change, I would say I would look at the customers or the front runners in terms of innovation. We have the DHL, we have the FedEx, we have the Amazon, and I'm very, or China, for instance, now, I'm very, very curious about what they are focusing on, because I think it shows the path. It shows what the next 10 to 15 years are going to look like. And those guys, they are looking at reliability, smartization of the whole supply chain. So it has to be fully digital, but optimized, reliable, connected, etc. Sustainability, like really getting a real attention, appetite everywhere, because it's important for customers, it's important for employees. So it's not a PR exercise any longer. So smartization, sustainability, visibility, this is, and I really hope so. This one is my big question, and I hope Wilson is right in saying that now cargo has the focus in the boardrooms within the aviation players. I really hope, Wilson, you are right in saying that this focus is going to continue. So that's my main concern, is to make sure that cargo is still visible, still getting the attention of the decision makers, of the CFOs, CEOs of airlines, airports, and ground handlers, so that we can continue to invest, we can continue to prioritize transformation, and we can continue to make it great.
Celine, you mentioned, and that's all great to hear, nice positive, a change in mentality for the industry, which is welcome. And Celine, you mentioned sustainability, and I think we've all mentioned sustainability at some point. Yeah, obviously for the air cargo industry, it's a difficult topic. But yeah, how do you think the air cargo industry can become more sustainable? And yeah, what's driving that push? Because it seemed to kind of go down in priority during the pandemic, certainly in terms of what we were writing about, for obvious reasons. Everyone had other things to be dealing with, but it's come back so strongly since towards the end of last year, and not just in air cargo, but just, when I turn on the news in general, the environment is a big topic. Yeah, what do you think is driving that, and how can air cargo kind of meet that challenge?
So you seem to
say
sustainability equals environment. I would say sustainability is really the mix between doing good for your people, for the community, for the planet, and for your business. So obviously the environment is very, very important, and it's what I would classify as license to grow. So if you just go away from the people, planet, and prosperity dimensions, and you look into 3 other dimensions, you have the license to operate, and this is your operational excellency, it's safety, it's security, it's digital transformation. This is really what makes you able to operate today. Then you have the license to grow, and this is, everything that you do to make it more efficient in terms of CO2 emissions, energy consumption, waste management, etc. But also the whole dimension on training and education of your people. So those elements are really part of the license to grow. Without that, there is no future for your company. And then I would classify another set of actions in a 3rd priority, which are the differentiators. And the differentiators are everything that you do for your employees, diversity and inclusion, which is one topic that I really strongly feel about, biodiversity, wildlife, etc. So all those elements are part of your differentiators, what makes you stand up from the rest of the crowd. But sustainability, as you had in mind, the environmental footprint of air cargo is a critical element, especially for citizens. It means for politicians, then it means for regulators and customers. They want to have companies and industry that will not harm the planet. They want to, and sometimes it can be seen as a PR exercise, but they want to have a feel-good, moment when they buy something. They don't feel the guilt of, using that service. So you have to respond as a company. You have to respond to that. It's a driver for sustainability. The demand of your customers, the demand of the community you are serving, the citizens in your own world. This is really driving your sustainable or your environmental actions. And then you have to do that also because it's the right thing to do, and it's also because it's what your employees are asking. and you're doing what is good for your employees, makes you the right company for the employees to go and to stay and to invest in their career with you. So it makes you more agile, more creative, more competitive, etc. So ultimately it's good for your business. So I really feel that sustainability is critical. It's true that before, and Guillaume mentioned that before, it was not so important or not so high on the priority, and it's growing now. And there is a role for industry associations, for instance, to really raise the awareness and continue and putting that topic in the discussion all the time, and convince that sustainability, this is not just a nice to have, it's a must. So that's a business must.
Yeah, certainly seems to be what we're seeing, what we're writing about anyway, and what companies are putting the emphasis on. Obviously, sustainability, and as Celine quite rightly pointed out, that which includes people, planet, and profit. That's been a big drive for Qatar Cargo over the last couple of years. You've launched a great project. But yeah, is that something that's been, why is Qatar Cargo doing that? Is that a customer demand? Is it something you feel you should be doing as a company? What's the kind of background to your drive there?
All of the above, Damien. Yeah. So look, I agree 200% with Celine. Absolutely agree. We talked about the supply chain being fragmented earlier, right? When Tom mentioned GHAs and forwarders and airlines, and so it takes a collaborative effort to make something change in our industry. We depend on one another. On sustainability, and I speak under the control of Tom, I believe that the freight forwarding industry has been exposed to the awareness of sustainability before the airline. Why? Because their customers are asking for it. Right? And now the freight forwarders are asking us to do something because their customers keep pushing. And when I talk to one of our customers, a pretty large textile fast fashion company, they explained to me that their customers, the consumers, are now buying clothes based on the carbon footprint of the production and transportation of that product. That's one element that drives the purchase. They've done everything they could to reduce waste at factory stage, at production stage. They've done everything they could on the ground with their freight forwarders. And they're telling me the only part of our business that was never fully explored is the air transportation. So what can you do there? So that's one element. The customer is asking for it because the consumer is asking for it. So at the end of the day, that is a trend that we will not escape as an industry. It will just keep coming back. And if we do nothing, it will bite us. We've got to respond. We have to respond. We don't have a choice. Secondly, in my organization, 66% of my manpower are millennials. And the internal, I was going to say pressure, you see the choice of words, not pressure, the internal motivation to do something on sustainability is equally strong. Our staff are asking for it. And so when we started to work on sustainability, not for the show, not for the annual report, but to actually do things, the number of volunteers inside Qatar Airways Cargo who wanted to work on those topics was just too many. So we had to select a few to work on those topics. And then we launched We Care, which is our sustainable, our CSR program. And I also agree with Celine. Sustainability cannot be reduced to only environment. There are multiple facets and dimensions to sustainability, and we are tackling all of them. So I'm not going to promote We Care here. Plenty of resources are available on our website and on LinkedIn, but this is the beginning of our response to that topic. We are so far from where we want to be, and the journey is so complicated. And really, I want to use this platform to share how difficult it is to try to become more sustainable. the obstacles are just everywhere. They're just everywhere. You look right, left, and center, and you have a problem when you want to change something because it's something new, right? We operate in a heavily regulated environment. When you want to change something, you need approvals from civil aviations, from airports, from a number of things. Plus, we operate with a number of other stakeholders, the GHAs, airports, freight forwarders, trucking companies, and so on and so forth. On the topic of carbon footprint, which is obviously, as an airline, the biggest topic, I have a call later today with a number of oil companies, coincidentally. And the call is to discuss how difficult it is to use sustainable aviation fuel. Even if you want to do it, even if you're prepared to pay 5 times the price of normal fuel, it's a challenge. It is a challenge. It is not available everywhere. It is not available, logistically, in the way that you need it. We are not a small carrier, so if we want to switch to a blend of SAF in one airport, we're not talking about one flight per week. We're talking about multiple flights per day. So that is a challenge for us. And when I talk to my peers in other airlines, it seems to be a challenge for everybody. The cost is obviously a massive challenge. So the way I look at sustainability is, it is a cost of doing business that you cannot ignore anymore. Actually, it's not a cost, it's an investment. It's an investment that doesn't pay back tomorrow, that will pay back in 5 years from now, in terms of branding and in terms of also becoming an employer of choice, and then all those facets of the business. Conclusion of all that, it is complicated. There is a lot more than just the environment. We want to do it, and I think we need to voice it a lot more than we have in the past few years, because as individuals, all of us want to do something right. We all have children or cousins or nephews, and we want to do something right for the next generation. But how, given the complexity and given our respective responsibilities in a corporate world, it is a bloody challenge.
Yeah, I can see that. Even on a personal level, trying to be environmentally friendly is a challenge. You go to the supermarket, try and buy stuff that's not covered in plastic, and So and Thomas.
And Damien, sorry, just to close very, very quickly. We also are global players, and so is Thomas, right? Wilson, no disrespect, but Wilson in Hong Kong has a lot more leverage because this is a closed perimeter. It's Hong Kong airport, it's one country, one regulation. But for global players like DHL or like ourselves, if you want to do sustainability, you can not only do it in Australia and in the US or in the UK, you want to do it globally. And go have that sort of discussions in certain countries. Good luck. Yeah. This is a problem for rich people, honestly, and we must be aware of that as well. It is also our responsibility to keep that in mind.
Yeah,
definitely. And Thomas, does what Celine and Guillaume were saying there, does that reflect with DHL?
Yes, that reflects 100% with DHL. But the first of all, sustainability, that is not a 100-meter dash, that is a marathon. We are in it, and we announced recently that we will invest 7 billion till 2030 into sustainability, and we have a certain advantage since we have our colleagues from DHL Express. So we are discussing now. How can we include the sustainable aviation fuel into our fleet? We also recently signed up with some carriers where we guaranteed the purchase of sustainable fuel. But as Guillaume said, the first problem is the availability in the global market. It is not always available, and there are still limited quantities. But sustainability. Is and the fuel, that is only one aspect. It's how you run your company, how you do the distribution, and that also includes then the ground handling, of course. That all goes into one bucket, and I would say every liter of gasoline that we save is a step in the right direction. For us, that is a top priority. What we will do is, with our preferred airlines, we will continue to develop programs where we can actively purchase sustainable aviation fuel, and we will provide our customers, as I mentioned that before, eventually an online possibility where they can pick and choose in regards to if they would purchase the sustainable aviation fuel. But that is only a small step for the what we do in regards to sustainability. Delivery with electrical vehicles, I think that we have been one of the major drivers in the world that first came out with the vans, with the electrical vans, and we will continue to do so. And it is a global challenge. It is not only a challenge that we have in one country. It is a global challenge in every country where we operate that has the top priority. And we just recently introduced our sustainability program till 2030. And our customers are asking for that. There is a drive from the consumer, there is a drive from the customers, and rightfully so. And I believe that as soon as COVID is getting back to a little bit more normal, that sustainability will be the major topic in the next years to come, 100%.
Okay, so a big important topic, and something that's going to be a long road to travel. Wilson, I'm just looking at the clock there. I wanted to get on supply chains, but before I do, maybe you could kind of, sustainability from Hactl's perspective. Obviously, it's a bit different, obviously, with a facility in one location, but how important is it to you?
Well, it's absolutely very important, and I fully agree with what Celine and Guillaume and Thomas have said. But I would just add one more perspective in view of time. Sustainability can be satisfying and fun as well. I'll just quote one example. Before COVID, that was in my first year joining Hactl, we have our annual Green Week, which I didn't start it. My predecessor started it, and he has done a great job in doing it. But the year, when we did in 2018, we actually had an upcycling theme. So we upcycle used clothes. It is sustainable, it's good, but we actually had a catwalk for our staff featuring the upcycled clothes. We use that as also as a team building exercise as well. So it can be fun as well. Of course, some of it which we have done echoes what everyone else have said. Solar farms, EVs, and how to optimize and rent vehicle movements. But doing what is right for the team and doing what is right for the community remains something which we have at heart in Hactl.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, the different.
It can be fun.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then Wilson, on supply chains, obviously, I mentioned it in my introduction. China has been the big production powerhouse of the world, really, for the last, I don't know how long. But I noticed it's probably about 7 or 8 years ago, I started writing about how some production was maybe moving back closer to home with nearshoring in Turkey for apparel and things like that. This was a while ago. And then, you had the trade wars last year, and that seemed to accelerate perhaps a bit of multi-sourcing. And then obviously COVID this year has kind of puts, risk management even higher on the agenda when it comes to supply chain, as we heard from Thomas earlier about their securing freight networks. For a kind of fixed location like you, how will that all change what you do? I'm guessing you're maybe expecting more transshipment volumes in the future.
Sure, I think near sourcing, as you rightly mentioned, I think Damien, has certainly happened. It may well reduce some traffic, but at the same time, I think what we are also seeing is that when people do near sourcing, you don't move the entire supply chain into one particular country. You just diversify into another regions, for example. So in Southeast Asia, for example. So actually, as you rightly mentioned, Damien, transshipment has picked up, and definitely a trend which we have seen across Southeast Asia. And of course, now there's the talks of RCEP and all that, and that could actually make that even more significant. But I will have another thought, though, I think, on this one. Yes, supply chains may change, and they may move away from China. And my thought is, it won't move totally away from China. And in fact, many of our friends who have moved factories from China to places like, let's say, Vietnam or other countries in Asia, Southeast Asia, are saying that actually there are still merits, in fact, a lot of merits in maintaining their manufacturing footprint in China. But even then, wherever they place, I think the role of air cargo is still very important, because you only need to have issues on the supply chains, or what happened at the Suez earlier, or what happened at Hanjin a few years ago, that necessitates the rapid stepping in of air cargo. So I think our role is to make sure that we are ready. And standing here in Hong Kong and looking at what happened over the past 12 months, actually manufacturing has continued to remain strong. And yes, it may be replaced by some transshipment, but I'm still very bullish about this part of the region.
And Thomas, how do you see supply chains changing in the future from a freight forwarder's perspective?
We see also the trend that some of our customers are moving part of their production into other markets like Vietnam. What I believe what we will see, and COVID definitely is a driver for that, that we will use more of the big hubs and of the big gateways, that we will go away from using every airport in the world, but focusing, for example, on Hong Kong. Hong Kong will always be one of the major gateways in Asia, and from there we do the distribution. So we see a clear trend that you're flying point to point, and then you do the distribution from there. And no longer that you go into, let's say, 50 different airports. We have about, I would say, probably 15 to 20 relevant airports in the world. And that is what we will continue to build up. That is where we will continue to put our investments, feed it from these airports, and then do the defeeding be that by truck or by train. And the trend to the nearshoring, I would say, overall, I expect that the global air cargo will continue to grow. There's always a need for air cargo. Our customers are looking at every angle, and yes, they are diversifying. They go into other markets. They go away a little. They shift additional production. I don't think that they are really shifting production from China. They are using other countries in addition to what they have today in China. For air freight, I'm absolutely not worried that the nearshoring will have an effect that you will see air freight going down. We saw that over the crisis. We saw that now if you have a little issue in the Suez Canal. We see that with the problems they have on the ocean freight. We see the conversions. And I believe that global trade overall will continue to grow in the next many years to come.
Yeah, Thomas, just to follow up on that point you made about the change in, using point-to-point flying, change from point-to-point flying. What's driving that change? Is that about speed, or what's the benefit of doing that?
The benefit of doing that is, and I think that also has something to do with sustainability. Flying the aircraft is already expensive enough. The fuel burn, if you fly with 80 tons on a freighter, or if you fly with 100 tons, the fuel burn is incremental. So for us, I think the first thing is the existing infrastructure that we have, including the airplanes, need to be utilized to the best possible way. And that you can do if you use the big hubs, where you fly point to point, let's say Frankfurt to Hong Kong or Hong Kong to Chicago. That is where you can get the optimizing utilization. And now if we go on to the ground handling, that is also something where we can definitely, if we are talking about automation, and as I mentioned before, we will get into discussions with the ground handlers, how we can support that process. If you talk about automation, that makes sense if you go into the big hubs. So I think that is, first of all, driven by a better utilization of the infrastructure. And then with that comes a reduction in energy and a better sustainability. And the distribution from the big hubs, that can be done much more fuel efficient and much more sustainable than if you fly into 20 different airports in a particular country. So I believe the trend now that you will see with COVID, maybe even with the passengers, I'm not sure, you will see that you see a certain trend into the big airports, and that at the cost to the small airports, very clear.
Okay, it's interesting. Yeah, it kind of, we've been writing a bit about some of the smaller freighter specialists over the last years picking up volumes, specialist airports. So it's kind of, yeah, interesting perspective on that. And yeah, is that something? What's your perspective on changing air cargo supply chains? Sorry, that was a question to Guillaume. Don't know if you can hear me, or perhaps Celine, why we've.
What was your question?
how air cargo supply chains are going to change in the future?
Well, I think it's so apart from the sustainability part that we discussed quite heavily, and the digital transformation, that are really for me the two big trends. I'd like to jump on what Thomas mentioned at the beginning and now on the better use of the existing infrastructure. You know, the importance for a freight forwarder to really manage the access of to capacity. And I think this is very much linked to what we have now in the shared economy principle. And I think all those, you know, shared assets, shared economy principle can be applied to our industry to really find also new business rules, creative business models for the industry to find ways to maximize and optimize the existing infrastructure before building new, before adding new capacity on the ground, on the air, etc. You know, finding really creative ways to optimize the existing infrastructure. So the shared economy principle would, in my view, come and really like help redefining the business models. And when you talk about also the optimization of existing infrastructure, I would link it to another of the cool topics I'm looking at is the unmanned aviation. And something that I'm very interested in looking is, you know, the conversion of manned aircraft into unmanned aircraft. And we can see quite a lot of startups popping up also here and there, either to build new type of vehicles, unmanned vehicles, or to convert existing vehicles into unmanned ones. And it's again in the same, you know, philosophy of optimizing, modernizing the existing infrastructure and like putting it ready for the future.
Yeah, drones is another big topic which we could have got onto, but we're probably running out. Yeah, it's one that comes up at every conference day, so I guess people will be able to get around elsewhere.
But you know what? Like 5-10 years ago, sustainability was popping up here and there, but it was not quite serious.
Yeah.
And now it's becoming really, really a thing. And I believe that for drones, it's going to be the same. So just
one for the future. And Guillaume, yeah, anything you wanted to add on air cargo supply chains and how they could change in the future?
To be honest with you, Damien, I feel this question is really more for the freight forwarders, because they have the direct contact with the customers, right? At the end of the day, our responsibility is to fly where the business is. So Tom mentioned earlier, and I agree with him, the big gateways of the big parts of the world. So let's say Shanghai, Hong Kong, Frankfurt, Amsterdam, Chicago, for example. are definitely there to stay for at least a couple of decades from now. We had observed in the past 10, 15 years, the emergence of secondary lanes, right? In pretty much everywhere. So that relates to two things. It relates to infrastructure congestion on those trunk lanes, infrastructure or regulatory congestions, right? So for example, traffic lights and so on. And it relates also to the need for a number of industries to get closer to their market. How will that move in the future? I honestly, I cannot pretend I know. I don't have a very strong opinion. However, what I observe is that, and somebody said it earlier, I think it was, maybe it was Tom, the e-commerce requirements are very different. The e-commerce industry, because it's a B2C business model, and because there is a notion of speed there, will probably have a strong impact in the supply chain. And we see it already with the emergence of Amazon, for example, in the US. Amazon, I don't know how they call it, Amazon Prime, Amazon Europe as an airline in Europe. So that probably will impact the landscape of our industry.
But if I may add to that, in terms of players, we saw the emergence of those new players, or those new like mega integrators, the Amazons and Alibaba. What is it stopping, traditional players of air cargo to also go and eat a part of another cake? Because I can see that trend of other players entering into the air cargo space and eating a part of the cake of the existing air cargo cake. But why is it that airlines, ground handlers, airports, freight forwarders are also not exploring new areas and just diversifying activities also, and instead of just staying on the same cake, but just go and explore others? For me it's striking to see that. Question. I have no answer.
As an airline, we never said we are not exploring that cake. Number one, we never said we're not interested in exploring that cake. But fundamentally, the business model is radically different.
Yeah.
As a transporter, as an airline, our interests are not necessarily aligned with the interest of big e-retailers. The business model is of a different nature. So this being said, this is a constant interrogation and question for, I believe, a lot of us in our industry. I think it's anyway good. I don't see it as eating in our cake. I see it as a complementary activity, because technically it moves some commodities from sea to air. Because when you order on Amazon a product of $5, it flies to you. It doesn't go by boat. So it went by boat from the production to a distribution center, but the last leg is flown. So it actually increases our pie, or cake at least. And we have seen it with the integrators, the traditional integrators, FedEx, DHL, Express. Wherever those players grow, they always have spillover. So the spillover always comes to the regular line haul, because the regular line haul will always be there simply because it's driven by passenger demand.
Yeah, it's an interesting one and a big opportunity for air cargo. And I guess there has been, Azul in Brazil have made great strides in kind of really targeting that e-commerce market. I'm sure there's other examples as well. So it'd be interesting to see if that can continue throughout the industry. Well, I think we've overrun a bit there, which is great, because it means we're having an interesting conversation. So yeah, I just want to thank everyone for joining us today. It's been great speaking with you, and some interesting points coming up there. I'm sure we could have gone on. So thank you all, and I hope viewers, you enjoyed the session, and any of you tuning in for the awards later or taking part in the awards later, good luck for that. So yeah, thank you everyone.
Thank you, Damien.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you,
very
guys.
much.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.